The rain pounded relentlessly against the window, a deafening rhythm that seemed to sync with the hammering of my heart. I'd always loved the sound of rain, until that night. It began like any other stormy evening. The streetlights outside flickered faintly, struggling against the dense curtain of rain that obscured everything beyond a few feet. The power in my small apartment flickered intermittently, but I had candles ready and a flashlight within reach. It wasn't the weather that unnerved me. It was the call. At 10:13 p.m., the phone rang, a shrill, piercing sound that cut through the steady hum of the rain. I picked it up hesitantly. Hello? My voice was steady, but I felt a shiver crawl up my spine. There was nothing. No static, no breathing, just silence. I hung up, dismissing it as a wrong number, and went back to my book. But the unease lingered. 10 minutes later, it rang again. This time, I let it ring twice before answering. Hello? I said more firmly. Again, silence. Except it wasn't. As I strained to hear anything, I caught it, a faint rhythmic tapping. It sounded like fingers on glass. I froze, glancing toward the windows, but the rain distorted everything outside. I hung up again and checked the locks on my doors and windows. Everything was secure. Still, a sense of dread settled over me, thick and suffocating. The third call came at 10:41 p.m. I didn't want to answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Who is this? I demanded. A low, raspy whisper answered. You shouldn't have left it there. My blood turned to ice. Left what? Who is this? The line went dead. My hands were shaking as I placed the receiver back in its cradle. The rain seemed louder, more oppressive. I tried to convince myself it was a prank, but the voice felt too real, too deliberate. Minutes stretched into an eternity. I tried to focus on anything else, my book, a puzzle, even the flickering of the candlelight. But then I heard it, a soft but distinct knock on my door. Knock, knock, knock. I froze. No one would be out in this weather, not at this hour. The knocks came again, louder this time. Who's there? I called out, my voice trembling answer. Just the rain, the distant rumble of thunder, and my own heartbeat roaring in my ears. Summoning what little courage I had, I peeked through the peephole. There was no one there. The hallway was empty, drenched in shadows. I stepped back, every instinct screaming at me to stay away from the door. Then the sound came again, but it wasn't a knock this time. It was a whisper, low and raspy, coming from just outside the door. You shouldn't have left it there. I stumbled back, grabbing the flashlight and holding it like a weapon. My mind raced. What had I left? What was it talking about? I didn't dare open the door, but I couldn't just stand there paralyzed either. The lights flickered once more and then went out entirely, plunging the apartment into darkness. The only light came from the pale, flickering glow of my candles. I clutched the flashlight tightly and backed away from the door, retreating to the living room. Then I heard it again, the tapping. Not on the window this time, but on the glass of my balcony door. My apartment was on the 5th floor. There was no way anyone could be there. I turned slowly, my breath caught in my throat. A shadow loomed against the rain-streaked glass, tall and unnatural. It didn't move like a person. Its limbs seemed too long, its head tilted at an impossible angle. And then it pressed a hand against the glass. The fingers were long and spindly, the nails jagged. I couldn't see its face, but I felt its gaze, piercing and unrelenting. It didn't knock or try to open the door. It just stood there, as if waiting. The phone rang again, the sound jarring me so badly I nearly dropped the flashlight. I didn't want to answer it, but something compelled me to. My hands trembled as I picked it up. "Why are you doing this?" I whispered. The voice on the other end let out a low, guttural laugh. "It's already inside." The call disconnected. I dropped the phone and turned back to the balcony door. The shadow was gone, but the feeling of being watched remained, suffocating and oppressive. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the corner of my living room, clutching the flashlight and a kitchen knife, watching and waiting for something, anything to happen. When dawn finally broke and the rain eased, I dared to open the door to the balcony. There was nothing there. No footprints, no sign of anyone or anything. But etched into the glass, faint but unmistakable, were the words, "You shouldn't have left it there." I moved out of that apartment the next day. But sometimes on rainy nights, I still hear the tap.
Story number 2.
It was the kind of rain that drowns the world, turning the familiar into something alien and strange. I had just finished my shift at the diner and was driving home through the back roads, the kind of winding lanes where the only light comes from your headlights and the occasional flash of lightning. The storm had rolled in fast, and the radio was nothing but static. I was alone, or at least I thought I was. The first time I saw her, she was standing on the shoulder of the road, drenched and shivering. A girl in a white dress, her hair plastered to her face. I slowed the car, instinctively reaching for the door handle, but something stopped me, a feeling I couldn't explain, like ice water in my veins. Her face was turned away, but I could see enough. She was pale, too pale, her arms hanging limp at her sides. I rolled down the window just a crack. "Do you need help?" I called out, my voice barely audible over the rain. She didn't respond. She didn't move. A flash of lightning illuminated the scene, and for a split second, I thought I saw her face twist into something unnatural, something wrong. Her mouth was too wide, her eyes too dark. I slammed the window shut and hit the gas, leaving her behind in the rearview mirror. My heart was racing, and I told myself it was just my imagination, the storm playing tricks on me. But then I saw her again. This time, she was standing in the middle of the road, her back to me. I slammed on the brakes, the car skidding on the wet pavement. My headlights illuminated her figure, but she didn't turn around. I honked the horn, but she didn't move. "Get out of the road!" I yelled, my voice cracking. She turned slowly, her head twisting unnaturally as if her neck were made of rubber. Her face, I can't describe it fully. It was like staring into a void, an abyss that stared back. Her mouth stretched into an impossible grin, revealing jagged teeth that seemed to glisten in the rain. The car stalled. I tried the ignition again and again, but it wouldn't start. She began walking toward me, her bare feet splashing in the puddles. I locked the doors, my hands shaking so badly I could barely grip the keys. "Come on, come on!" I whispered to the car, my voice trembling. She reached the hood, her hands pressing against the windshield. The glass fogged up instantly, and I couldn't see her face anymore, just the faint outline of her form. Then I heard it, the faint sound of her nails dragging across the glass, a high-pitched screech that made my teeth ache. The car roared to life, and I floored it, swerving around her. I didn't look back. I didn't stop until I was home, locking every door and window behind me. That night, I couldn't sleep. The rain continued to pound against the roof, and every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face. Around 2 a.m., the power went out, plunging the house into darkness. I lit a candle and sat in the living room, jumping at every sound. And then I heard it. The soft, deliberate tap of nails against glass. I turned slowly toward the window. She was there, standing outside, her face pressed against the glass. Her grin was wider now, her eyes gleaming with something that wasn't human. She raised a hand, pointing at me, and then mouthed something I couldn't hear but understood all the same. "You can't escape." The next morning, I found muddy footprints leading from the window to the front door. The door was still locked. The footprints stopped abruptly in the middle of the living room. I haven't seen her since, but on stormy nights, I still hear the tapping. And I know, deep down, she's waiting.
Story number 3.
The night started with an unsettling stillness, the kind where the air feels thick and even the sound of your own breathing seems too loud. I was house sitting for my aunt, a small cabin tucked deep into the woods. She had warned me about the storm coming, so I had stocked up on candles and flashlights. The isolation didn't bother me, at least not until the sun went down. The storm rolled in just after 9 p.m. Thunder growled low and menacing, and the rain hit the roof like 1,000 tiny fists. I settled on the couch with a book, the soft glow of a single lamp keeping the darkness at bay. Then the power went out. I sighed, not surprised, and lit a few candles. The flickering light cast strange shadows on the walls, making the cabin feel smaller, more confined. I told myself it was just a storm, nothing to be afraid of. But then I heard the knocking. At first it was faint, almost drowned out by the rain. A slow, deliberate tap, tap on the front door. I froze, the book slipping from my hands. Nobody should be out here, not in weather like this. My aunt's nearest neighbor lived over a mile away. "Hello?" I called out, my voice trembling. The knocking stopped. I crept toward the door, flashlight in hand, and peered through the peephole. Nothing, just the rain-soaked porch and the swaying trees beyond. I hesitated but decided not to open the door. Instead, I went back to the couch, trying to convince myself it was just the storm playing tricks on me. But then the knocking started again, this time louder, more insistent. I grabbed the flashlight and made my way back to the door. "Who's there?" I shouted. No answer. My heart pounded as I reached for the doorknob, but before I could touch it, the knocking stopped again. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, the only sound the relentless rain. Then I heard it, a soft, scraping sound, like nails dragging against wood. It was coming from the back door. Every instinct screamed at me to stay put, but I had to check. The cabin was small, and it didn't take long to reach the kitchen. I shone the flashlight at the back door, and my stomach dropped. There were scratches on the wood, fresh and deep, as if something had been clawing at it. I backed away, my breath coming in short gasps. That's when I heard it. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, and heavy, circling the cabin. They stopped outside the living room window. I didn't want to look, but I couldn't stop myself. I turned, shining the flashlight toward the window. For a moment there was nothing, just the rain streaking down the glass. And then I saw it. A face pressed against the window, pale and hollow-eyed, its mouth twisted into a grotesque grin. Its skin looked stretched too tight over its bones, and its eyes, they weren't human. They were black, empty voids that seemed to swallow the light. It stared at me, unmoving, for what felt like hours. Then it raised a hand and tapped the glass, 3 times. Tap, tap, tap! I screamed, dropping the flashlight. When I scrambled to pick it up and shone it back at the window, the face was gone. I barricaded myself in the bedroom, pushing the dresser against the door and clutching a kitchen knife. The storm raged on outside, but I could still hear it. Soft footsteps pacing around the cabin, and occasionally the faint sound of tapping on the windows. At some point, exhaustion took over, and I must have fallen asleep. When I woke, the sun was rising, and the storm had passed. I hesitantly stepped out of the bedroom, half expecting to find it waiting for me. But the cabin was empty. When I opened the front door, my blood ran cold. Scratched into the wood in jagged, uneven letters were the words, "I will be back." I left that day and never returned to the cabin. My aunt swears she's never seen or heard anything unusual there. But sometimes on quiet nights, I still hear that knocking in my dreams. Tap, tap, tap. And I know it's only a matter of time before it finds me again.